Arguably, one of the most common symbols in history is that of the mother. The mother is comforting, nourishing, and fertile, and the creator of life. She cares for and protects others without fail. She possesses amazing willpower. The mother is often viewed as a role model, one that influences both males and females alike. Just as people tend to possess many of the mannerisms and personality traits of his or her mother, the mother archetype often inspires those around her to become morally and spiritually pure. If you have ever played Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, this archetype might sound a lot like the boss, the one who was the only woman and arguably the most powerful member of the Cobra unit, a team of heroes from World War II. The one who trained and mentored Big Boss, the world's greatest soldier, like a parent. And the one whose misinterpreted will sparked the major conflict of the entire Metal Gear Solid franchise. Thus, the boss is comforting and nourishing, powerful, and a creator of sorts, just like the mother archetype. The boss got her start in the Cobra unit, a unit which she was an essential part of. Because of her efforts, she was known in the eyes of her country as a legendary hero. This unit was made up of 6 members: the pain, the fear, the fury, the sorrow, the end, and the joy, aka the boss. Sometime between their efforts in World War II and the Battle of Stalingrad and the invasion of Normandy on D-Day, the boss had a love affair with the sorrow. This love affair resulted in the birth of Adamska, the child who would become Ocelot Revolver on the battlefield. Because of this affair, the boss's child was taken from her by the secret organization called the Philosophers, the ones pulling the strings behind the world's greatest nations. This was merely the beginning of the boss's sorrowful tale. The boss's troubles with the U.S. Secret Services did not end with the taking of her child. After the events of World War II, the boss continued to work with the CIA. She spent a brief period mentoring Naked Snake, a young gifted member of the CIA. Naked Snake and the boss had a mother-son type relationship, but it is unclear how deep their relationship went. Some conversations between the two during the events of MGS3 almost seem to suggest that the two were lovers, but there is no other evidence to back this theory up. What is clear is that their relationship was one-sided. During the events of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, Naked Snake laments that he knows nothing about the boss, while she can recognize his physical condition simply by the sound of his voice. Part of this dissonance between the two comes from the boss's abrupt departure from Snake's life. The boss's departure from Snake's life was later revealed to him through tapes recorded by a woman named Eva during the events of Peace Walker, years after MGS3 took place. As it turned out, during the Cold War, the US government needed a leg up against the Soviet Union in the space race. Thus, they needed to use someone that the Soviets could trust to plant a sleeper agent within their ranks to gain the Soviets' secrets to space exploration. Due to her efforts during World War II in Stalingrad, the boss was the perfect candidate for this position. The boss accomplished this task, but not before she found out that the sleeper agent was feeding the US false information, which was a realization that she came upon herself. When the CIA found out about this, they blamed the boss and claimed that if she had taken the sleeper agent's family hostage, she would have been able to prevent him from defecting to the Soviet Union. The truth was, the boss knew that this would have been an effective strategy, but she was afraid to commit such an act. After having her child taken from her, the boss refused to be the cause of such an awful fate for anyone else, even if it meant betraying her country. In order to look better in the eyes of the CIA, the boss decided to become a guinea pig for NASA's first human space flight attempt. By then, they had already succeeded in sending a chimp into space, but were doubting the effectiveness of using human passengers on their spacecrafts. But the boss decided to take up a leadership role on the project and became known as NASA's 8th astronaut, the Mercury Lady. Soon, NASA decided that changes needed to be made to their spacecrafts, and the addition of windows was necessary for space exploration. However, due to the fear that this would weaken the spacecraft structurally and be ineffective in shielding the passenger from cosmic rays that could be potentially harmful, NASA decided to put the boss on the spacecraft instead of putting one of their 7 astronauts in danger. Despite receiving a 20% chance of survival on this mission, the boss took on the challenge, and even helped NASA implement the changes to the ship. Due to the sudden realization that the Soviets were about to launch their own spacecraft, the boss was forced to embark on her journey into space before the test on the ship had been completed. She had not even completed her training. By some miracle, the boss was able to achieve entry into space just minutes after the Soviets. While in space, the boss looked down at the Earth and saw no borders of separation between countries. The world was one, and all ideologies that set nations apart from each other meant nothing. This became the basis for the boss's ideal world, the one that so many strived for after her death. Because the tests had never been finished, there was a miscalculation in the landing path of her spacecraft, and the rough landing forced the boss into a coma that lasted 6 months. Unfortunately, the boss's accomplishment never went down in the history books, simply because it was achieved shortly after the Soviets. Not only did the US cover up her achievement, but they also framed her. In order to prevent her from getting any more important tasks, she was blamed for the US's failed attempts to take back Cuba at the Bay of Pigs, even though she had nothing to do with that mission. The boss was not upset over the fact that she was used as the US's dummy. In fact, she was happy to be used. However, the boss needed to know who had double-crossed her and turned her sleeper agent against her. So she returned to Russia and found out that the one who had nearly ruined her career was none other than her former lover, the Tsaro. It was then that the boss was forced to kill the father of her child. Left with nowhere else to turn, the boss accepted a mission from a former contact of hers, Major Zero. From there, Fox was born, and Naked Snake and the boss were reunited in the mission that opens MGS-3. The boss reveals herself to Naked Snake over a codec call, but even more surprising is his encounter with her in Selino-Yarsk, the site of Snake's virtuous mission. After rescuing his target, Snake runs into the boss on a bridge, blocking his path. The boss reveals to Snake that she is betraying the US and defecting to the Soviet Union. However, Snake does not know that this is all part of an elaborate ruse set forth by the US. A helicopter descends, and Snake's target, Sokolov, a scientist forced to produce weapons of mass destruction, is taken from Snake. Inside the helicopter is none other than the Cobra unit, the boss's old comrades. A large man with scars covering his face approaches the bridge, holding a nuclear warhead-equipped rocket launcher. This man is Volgin, a man with the power to manipulate electricity, who is also the strategic operations commander of the Soviet Union. Snake fails to stop them, and the boss, in a lightning-fast display of close-quarters combat, throws Snake into the depths of the water below. As the helicopter leaves, Volgin launches his rocket launcher, an American-made Davy Crockett, onto Russian citizens, causing international turmoil. Snake returns to Selino-Yarsk later to stop Volgin, the boss, and the Cobra unit from overthrowing the Soviet Union and wreaking havoc on the rest of the world. Upon his return, he is met once again by the boss, who appears before him and tells him to go home. What Snake does not realize is that this is a desperate plea from the boss. She knows that by being pit against Snake, one of them is going to wind up dead, possibly at the hands of the other. She beats Snake down once again, as a warning, and takes apart his gun, rendering it useless. The boss does not encounter Snake again until after he has defeated several of her comrades. At this point, Snake has been captured and is being tortured by Volgin, which was undoubtedly painful for her to witness. Volgin asks her to cut out Snake's eye, but she hesitates, and before she can hurt her former student, she is interrupted. However, Snake prevails once again, and after defeating the Cobra unit and Volgin, he has a final confrontation with her. At first, Snake is hesitant. He does not want to kill her, but the boss gives him an ultimatum. Snake can either be loyal to his country or loyal to her. After a grueling battle, Snake stands over the boss with a gun pointed at her head. The boss knows that she has lost and desires death. She tells him to kill her, and after a moment he pulls the trigger. This death is the catalyst that fuels the conflict of the rest of the series, which will be explored in the next video. As Snake finds out after her death, the boss did not intend to betray her country. The boss's true goal, as is revealed by Eva, was to recover the Philosophers' legacy, a large sum of money that was previously held by the Philosophers and was taken by Volgin. The boss was ordered by the US to recover the legacy, but the only way to recover it would be to steal it from the Soviets. Therefore, the boss defected to once again act as a spy for the United States. In the end, she allowed Snake to kill her so that he could understand the tragedy of her life, and so that perhaps he could change the world in a way that she never could. In the end, the boss's sacrifice outlines a major theme. This theme is loyalty to your country to the very end. Even though she was being used, the boss only cared about what was right for her country. She worked tirelessly despite being unrecognized for her efforts time and time again. The boss was more than simply a hero. She was a mother and a mentor. Unfortunately, very few would remember her sacrifice, and those who remembered would live on to tarnish her will, causing war for the sake of revenge and self-interest, rather than the good of all.
But then something happened that no one could have predicted. Colonel Volgin fired an American-made nuclear warhead at Sokolov's research facility. Khrushchev demanded that the US government provide proof that it wasn't involved. They couldn't just abort the operation to steal the legacy. So the operation itself was greatly expanded and revised. The authorities in Washington knew that in order to prove its innocence, they'd have to get rid of the boss, and that one of their own would have to do the job. The public couldn't be allowed to find out about it. Not ever. This, they concluded, would be the best way to keep the whole thing under wraps. The boss wouldn't be allowed to come back home alive, and she wouldn't be allowed to kill herself. Her life would be ended by her most beloved disciple. That was the way the government wanted it. That was the mission she was given, and she had no choice but to carry it out. Her death at your hands was a duty she had to fulfill. Out of duty, she turned her back on her own comrades. A lesser woman would have been crushed by such a burden. The taint of disgrace will follow her to her grave. Future generations will revile her. In America as a despicable traitor with no sense of honor. And in Russia as a monster who unleashed a nuclear catastrophe. She will go down in official history as a war criminal. And no one will ever understand her. That was her final mission. And like a true soldier, she saw it through to the end. But I think she wanted you, of all people, to know the truth. She wanted to live on in your memory. Not as a soldier, but as a woman. But she was forbidden to tell you herself. And that's why she told me. Snake, history will never know what she did. No one will ever learn the truth. Her story, her debriefing, will endure only in your heart. Everything she did for her country. She sacrificed her life and her honor for her native land.